got on the docket here tonight is approval of minutes, and this should be pretty quick and brief. Other than the comments that we saw on the electronic copy online, does anyone else wish to propose any further modifications to the minutes as documented?
Got my name spelled wrong there someplace.
Which one? Which
I
month?
can't remember which one it was.
Okay.
I didn't write it down. 'cause
I
it
do
ha-
have
it
one
happens
question.
so often
The January 26th meeting, we got Rob absent. When did Rob come on board?
then.
March.
Yeah, I thought so. So I don't think Rob was actually on in January, so I think we should just delete that absent. You were here for the February meeting, though, is that true? Because you made the comment that he was late in February.
That's right. Maybe I'm
I
wrong.
thought he came on in
Maybe I'm
March.
wrong.
Yeah, it would be March.
Okay, then I was wrong, wrong minutes.
That was the one on Vimeo or Zoom
I'm not going to share my screen today.
in February. I think I watched it, but
That was the one
yeah, I just
where,
watched this one. I wasn't present.
okay, that was the one where we had the pre-app for the building on Route 1.
Yeah, on Route 1.
Okay, so you were not, you were not
yeah,
a member,
yeah, I
okay.
wasn't a member at that
Okay, so Orion, can we just delete his name off both of those as being absent?
It is gone. Yeah, you were appointed March 13th, 2023.
Okay.
Nobody can comment.
You will be removed from those.
I can't find it.
Any other comments besides those? Nothing, okay. Would anyone care to put forward, we'll do January 1st, would anyone care to put forward a motion that the January 26th, 2023 minutes be approved as amended online?
So I'll move that.
Okay, moved by Jeff, second?
Jan, yeah.
Second by Jan. All in favor? Can't vote. Were you here?
I was here.
Oh, you're here, okay.
Rob can't vote.
Okay. Okay, Rob can't vote. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is John got his hand up? 6. Okay, 6. Okay, 600 to approve those. And the February minutes, would anyone care to put forward a motion that the February minutes be approved as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Jeff, second.
Second.
Seconded by Jan. All in favor? Okay, 500. Okay, so that takes care of our minutes. Let's move on to the first agenda item, which is consideration of a pre-application for Peter Alsop for a change of use of the existing barn on the property located at 33 Gurney Street, Rockport, Maine, and identified as map 007, lot 087, owned by Joseph Wright Alsop and Morgan Dietrich Van Vorst, and is being represented by Gartley and Dorsey Engineering and Survey. So if, pre-application, Will, I know you're familiar with it. The intent of the pre-app is just to have kind of an overview of what the plan is, and it gives us an opportunity to identify any concerns we have, and it gives you an opportunity to ask the board any questions you might have about your plan as it is today. And then we'd hope to see you back for the final presentation soon.
Yes, that would be great. So Peter's with me tonight, and he's going to start off by just giving you a quick explanation of what he has going on the property and what he's planning to do. And then I'll give you an overview of the changes that we're talking about on the site.
Right, so you may recall from my previous appearance before you, I don't know if that was a month or 2 months ago, but we have a small diversified vegetable farm. We had sought a recommendation from the planning board to the select board, and then from the select board to move our property into the 902 zoning district so that we could have a retail presence. Our idea is to turn the barn, the historic barn on the property, into essentially a farm stand. This season that would be a Friday only sales event, basically. But we need a place to park people and also an ADA accessible path from the parking into the barn. So that's essentially the gist of what's being proposed here on the plan. I should remind you, we abut the 902 and we have a 30-year lease from our neighbor, Julia Hunter, on that parcel directly to the east of us.
So that would be looking from the front, which side, right or left?
To the right.
To the right?
Yeah, if you're looking at the property at the barn, it's to the right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Joe,
that's-
I have a question.
Yes, Tom?
Did we have some letter or something from the owners?
when you say the owners,
Standing?
uh,
Is there a question of standing here?
That's a good question.
Well, the use that we're proposing is actually on the property that's owned by Peter and his wife. So
correct.
he mentions the lease because a lot of the area that's being farmed
Oh,
is on property that's
Okay,
leased.
Okay, but as far as
Right.
this project is
As far as
It is
concerned-
what we're
exclusively
before
on
the board
okay.
for, it's on his property.
Yeah.
And so what we're looking for is a change of use and an approval for that change of use.
okay, so this isn't the zone change?
No, so the zone change is scheduled to be voted on in June by the voters.
Right.
Okay.
And so while we're on that, of course, we'd need to have that zoning change before we could approve a final project. So I'm not sure when you're planning on coming back, if it's May or June. May probably would be a challenge because it would be before the vote.
Right.
Mhm.
So June would probably be the soonest. Is that
So
what
we
you're
were,
thinking?
the disadvantage to waiting is
Yeah.
for them planning to get this done so that it can be operational for this summer. What we would like to propose is that we come back in May and that any approval would be conditioned upon that vote passing.
Okay. Anybody just straw man vote here, straw vote? Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
No. Okay. Orion, that's okay, isn't it? To do it with that condition? Yeah. That sounds fine.
All right,
Great.
that would be great.
Yeah.
And so as Peter mentioned, they have an entrance there now and gravel parking. And the big change is doing a little bit of grading to that gravel parking to make it ADA compliant so that we can put a handicap parking space there. And then an accessible route from that parking space to the barn, which is that pathway that we've shown that has a little bit of a nice traversing loop to it in order to get the distance we need to meet the grades required for accessibility. Otherwise, the property's proposed to stay as it is. It's really,
Okay,
it's
so
really a change, the use is
Change of use.
what's driving coming to the planning board.
right, no significant changes to the outside of the barn that we'd be concerned about.
In fact,
Okay.
none at this point. yeah.
Okay. And so, change of use, typically we'd ask for a landscape plan. This is in a rural area. It's a farm stand. Does anyone feel strongly we would suggest that they should have a landscaping plan when they come back?
We're reviewing it as if it's not in a rural area.
I'm sorry?
We're reviewing it as if it's not in a rural area, it's in a village area, so just to clarify.
A village area.
Yeah.
It's still a bit rural, yeah, it
Yeah.
is a village, so, yes. Were you suggesting you'd like to?
No,
Okay.
just clarifying
Okay,
that,
yeah,
we don't presuppose it to be rural and
Right, right.
we're effectively
All
changing
all
it.
Brockport's rural. Okay, so I don't think we'd ask them to bring a landscape plan in, given the purpose of the lot and the use and where it is. Any other concerns about what's shown here from the board? Tom?
I just have a question about the parking area.
Sure.
I notice you have one handicap space, but the rest of this area will accommodate approximately how many cars?
I believe it's about 11 cars, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Will, but I think you need one handicap spot for up to 25 spaces.
That's correct, yeah.
11, and let's see, retail space is probably based on square footage. I haven't looked at the table. So you'd have, well, I'm sure you'd look at the number of square feet in the building and just figure the number of parking spaces when you get back.
Yeah, and a big part of the barn, only a portion of it is
Okay.
gonna actually be
Yeah.
used for retail, so
Right.
there's storage and there's processing,
Yeah.
but we can,
It's probably about 400 square feet, actually. Just the right-hand bays of
Yeah.
the barn would be the retail portion of it.
Okay,
it's a pretty small portion, so we're gonna be over on the
Sure.
parking.
sure. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Peter, do you have plans at this point to have any other vendors other than yourself?
We would like to carry other products, is that what you're asking?
No, I'm carrying other products is
Yeah.
one thing, but I'm thinking other people, other booths set up more like a farmer's market.
No, it wouldn't, not a farmer's market. It'll be kind of a farmer's market setup, I suppose, where it's just, our tables and our product, but where, there's things we can't grow or things we can't provide, like cheese and milk and eggs and that sort of thing. So we were going to recruit other vendors to participate in the retail space.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So that brings up a related question.
Yeah,
Any employees on there would be your employees or your
correct.
family?
Yep, that's right.
But you will possibly have other vendors or, let's see,
I should clarify.
other businesses, trucks coming in
Mhm.
and delivering things. In other words, it's not just produce from the farm.
Correct, yes. I mean, to start this season, it's just our produce, but our goal is to sort of develop partnerships with other local agricultural producers so we can sort of expand what we're able to offer people. Yeah.
Do you anticipate having a dumpster somewhere on the property?
No, we're not really at that scale where that would be necessary. But curious where you're going with that, or?
Well,
Yeah,
we have people who empty dumpsters in Rockport, and they do this at dark 30 in the morning.
uh-huh,
Like,
Yeah.
4:30, 4 o'clock is nothing to hear
yeah,
in my house, a dumpster emptying from Riley School, okay?
uh-huh,
Making all kinds of racket and,
sounds loud.
just
I live closer to
wondering.
Riley than he does, so
Uh-huh.
I know what he's talking about.
No dumpsters planned, no loud machinery planned in the middle of the night, yeah, certainly.
How far would the nearest neighbor's dwelling be from the store?
So, Julie's land, where we're leasing, they have a cottage on that, property that they rent out. That's probably the nearest neighbor, which is, probably on the order of 300 feet, I would guess. I would need to look at a
If that's fine.
bird's eye
I'm
view
fine
of it.
with that.
Yeah. I think that's
So
probably
it's
about there.
probably, yeah, I think it's probably about 250 to 300 feet
Yeah,
Okay.
distance from the barn to the residential structure.
Mhm.
right.
Will, on the entrance, pretty good sight distance. about
Yeah,
that.
very good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's probably, 35-mile-an-hour speed limit there, it's pretty slow. So there's no issue.
Certainly no faster than I would think even 25, but I'm not sure about Gurney Street.
All right, doesn't look like an
I
issue.
can check that, Joe.
The driveway itself will remain a gravel driveway,
Yes.
and the path that goes from the parking area to the barn will be a paved path.
I would like it to be a compacted gravel surface, so
Okay.
it sort of matches the aesthetic of
Yeah.
the farm, rather than like a blacktop surface. So I'm looking at, what the possibilities are that would satisfy the ADA requirements for that material.
Okay. And how about signage? What are you thinking?
We'll
proposed
have
signage.
a sign, a farm sign at the entrance, conforming to the signing
Right.
requirements. And then I think just the handicap parking signs.
Okay. Is it going to be?
There'll probably need to be a sign on the barn that says farm store, just so that as you're pulling in, it's obvious, where that is.
Right, I don't have a visual memory of what it looks like from the road, but is
Yeah.
there any risk of confusing the entrance for the residents for the entrance to the barn?
That is a concern of mine as well, but I think a well-placed farm sign will clarify that.
My only worry there is people will pull into the residence and then
Yeah.
realize, and then they have to
Yeah.
back out
Right,
into the road.
sure. I mean, there is a place to turn around
Okay.
in the driveway, but I'm hoping we solve that problem with signage.
Right.
We'll have to evaluate whether that, if that happens, we'll have to figure out how we're gonna solve for that, but at the moment, I think it'll do the job. The entrance is, the farm entrance is between two prominent black locust trees, and I think with the sign there, people will quickly realize this is where I'm going, and the parking area is visible from the street too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe,
Oh.
a follow-on to
Sure.
that. I know I asked this question last time, but there's not going to be any ingress or egress out to Old Rockland Street?
To Old Rockland Street.
You mean like through the field? Is that what you mean? Like out the back way?
That easement that you have.
Yeah,
right.
no. That easement, it's a 30-foot wide easement. I think we discussed this last time. I'm not actually sure how that came to be or what its purpose or intention was.
But there's not a road there now?
No. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
a kind of a piece of land that moves back, but there's a steep ravine there that goes down to Meadowbrook. There'd be no
Probably
way.
wouldn't
You would
be
need
advisable
you
trying
need
to
a
get out
bridge,
that way.
a bridge, basically. Yeah.
I would think if there's a problem with people turning into the driveway, a
Yeah.
couple of cones with an arrow on it,
Sure.
Friday morning is gonna
Right.
do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as it is this season, we're really just planning a 4-hour windows on
Right,
Friday,
right.
so I think we could easily
I
handle
think
it.
you could handle it, figure
Yeah.
out the traffic.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, that do it for pre-app? Everybody okay? No other comments of what we want to see next time? We're got it all covered. All right, we'll see you in May.
In May, that would be great.
Terrific,
Thank
terrific.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks
Alright.
very much.
Thank you, Peter.
For a final?
Yes,
All right,
We
yeah,
just-
getting in May.
What?
Not in May, you wouldn't have the ordinance in play in May.
We just, maybe missed it.
Conditionals.
We just talked about that. And I asked if it was okay,
You
if
could-
we approved it with the condition that it's subject to approval.
That's what you were asking.
Yes.
I thought you were asking, can you do a straw vote today? And I'm like, sure.
no,
I mean,
no.
Yeah, you can do a
Yeah, I'm
straw
sorry.
vote today. I mean,
No, it was whether we could do that with, upon condition of the voter approval in May.
so, I mean, you could, I would advise you, like, if you get your approval, don't do anything until the ordinance
no,
actually
I mean,
happens.
yeah, the
Sure.
intent would be that the approval doesn't go into effect until the vote passes.
Yeah.
I
Right.
agree with that.
But then we wouldn't have to wait another 2, 3, 4 weeks to
Right.
come
To
back
kind of
after
keep
that.
things
You
moving.
can
just,
sign
you
the
know-
site plan.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to get very specific with the condition of approval, but yeah, we could do that,
So we'd pre-approve it with that one condition, that it's subject to voter approval,
yes,
okay?
yes.
Everything that we do is subject to voter approval, basically.
Yeah, we'll work on the wording of it,
Okay.
but yeah, we could do that stuff.
That'd be great.
That'd be
Yeah, but
terrific.
the understanding is that if you go and do all these preparations and the voters turn it down,
Yeah,
That would be a
that
bad
would be a
thing all the way
problem.
around, yeah.
but at least it would let us get started. I think that vote's in June 8th, right?
I think
Yeah,
13.
it's pretty early this year.
So we could get started soon thereafter, as opposed to waiting, I think, for this meeting, which would be at the end of June. So
Yeah.
it would be helpful.
Yep.
All right.
All right, good.
Excellent,
Thank you.
Thank you
Good to see
very much.
everybody.
All right.
Stick around, we're gonna talk about one of your neighbors
Yeah,
next.
you interested in 280 Rockland Street? Yeah. What's that? It's a tax acquired property that we're gonna be putting for sale pretty soon.
it's got a barn. Just needs a coat of paint.
Okay, next item on the agenda is consultation.
Yeah. it
Sale.
Had to be worded interesting.
Consultation of sale of town property located at 280 Rockland Street in Rockport and known as map 007-131. A? No, I don't, what's the A? To see if the town will vote.
So this is in the warrant itself. This is the wording that was.
Oh,
pulled from
okay,
that the voters
okay,
approved.
I see, that's
So
what it is.
that in there, it says after consultation with the planning board and conservation commission, so it's a little
Okay.
interesting, so we're
Okay.
consulting.
To see if the town will vote to authorize the select board on behalf of the town to sell and dispose of any real estate acquired by the town for non-payment of taxes thereon, on such items they deem advisable, and to execute quit claims deeds for the property. The sale or disposal shall be made only after consultation with the planning board and the conservation commission, except for the purpose of clearing title or of conveyance of real estate to the original owner, or in the case of timeshare units, reconveyance back to the original owner over the timeshare estates association of the unit owners. Property to be disposed of by written policy and on terms the select board deem advisable.
There you have it.
Okay. So, we're here to consider this piece of property, map 007-137 on Rockland Street, And as I understand it, I'll state this, and Ryan, you could correct me if I misstate something. But what this, the planning board is doing here is we're looking at it from our land use standpoint as to whether this piece of property should be sold by the town, or if the town should retain it. So we're not to concern ourselves with any other matters about the acquisition of the property, or, you know, how the town ends up disposing of it or selling it. That's not our business. What we're here to do is just make a recommendation to the select board as to whether we believe there's any reason for the town to retain the property, or if the town should go ahead and sell the property, dispose of the property. That's it. So Orion had outlined a few things in the notes he sent out a couple weeks ago to look at for this. Suggested taking a look in the comprehensive plan to see if there was any reference that might influence this piece of property. In the land use ordinance, if there's anything that would be considered related to this. And so with that, I'll open it up for discussion. Any comments, any concerns either way about either retaining it or selling it on the part of it?
So we've confirmed that it does not abut any conservation land or any other
It did,
town-owned land.
okay, and so I'll say what I know, and I'll let Orion add to it. I know that there is a preserve, but the preserve does not abut this property. It's actually separated by one piece of property. And so that's the only preserve that I know of around that area. Orion, you have anything
I'm gonna
different?
pull it up right now
Okay.
on the map.
It's the trail that actually originates from Mace's Pond there. If you pull into that little turnoff by Mace's Pond and you go what I would call south down 17, it goes that way, because I've actually walked the trail. It goes along the stream and then loops back around to Mace's Pond where you start.
Rockford Cemetery. Oh, that's a cemetery over there. So
While
there's a-
Ryan's looking
there's-
at that, any other,
There's a cemetery across the street somewhere. I mean, the town, like, so directly across, like what you found, Jeff, there's a parcel directly across the street. It's pretty wet, kind of right at the road, but there's a cemetery somewhere on it, but the town owns that parcel. And then, we don't own any other parcels around that. And in terms of conservation,
yeah, I looked at it from a conservation trail standpoint, and it's not really connected to anything else.
no.
It's not adjacent to anything, it's not connected. So, I mean, even if like one of the land trusts were interested in it, I'm not sure it connects with their trail system.
I agree with you.
I just wonder if there's anything contiguous within
Yeah,
town-owned property.
Unfortunately not.
I think it was evident to everybody who toured it that the structure really has no value whatsoever, that it really is not,
Salvage value,
Is-
whatever salvage value would be.
yeah, whatever limited salvage
Do
value
we
there is.
know how recently this property was farmed?
No, I don't.
No,
It would be, I guess, 2018 for sure is when we started the foreclosure process, and I think before that even, I think 2018 is the date that I recall, is when we started the foreclosure process. And then COVID definitely stalled that out, so.
Was there somebody living in the building when we began the foreclosure?
The person who owned it is deceased, and then there was somebody that was inhabiting the building, and then we had to go through a eviction process through the court to remove them. Yes.
Well, it was not somebody upstanding, it was just a renter or a vagrant or whatever?
Correct.
Okay. Well,
So-
I didn't see any conservation value in it, especially if it's not attached to anything, and I would rather see the property get used than sit there waiting for a land trust to decide to buy it.
The property's in somewhat a state of disrepair today, I think.
Yes.
And so I would think that surrounding residents would appreciate if there was some action that was taken to clean that property up.
Speaking as a
You know, the only thing I brought up with Orion, we talk about the villages in Rockport, the 5 villages. If there was any value in turning that area into a park for that village, Rockville as a village. There's a lot of parks today in Rockport. I don't know if that would be viable. The other thing is, it's right on 17. It's a busy road.
Well, the
Very
topography isn't conducive to a
No,
park.
it's not.
very
It's
sloped
very
down.
hilly, yeah,
It would be a very expensive place to make into a park.
yeah.
Do we have any knowledge of whether or not that building has been vandalized or used for partying or for any purpose at all over the course of the last 3 years? Does it appear to be?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, you were inside it?
No, I've been inside of it, yes, and I don't think,
Signs of old bad parties, pizza boxes, needles, children laying around?
yeah, I mean, that gets outside of, the land use aspect, but no, there were not anything of that nature.
Because I
no.
worry about either somebody setting fire to it,
Sure.
just out of boredom, or that this gets discovered as a new local lover's lane.
We keep close eye on it. The police put close,
Okay.
I forget the routine, and I won't state it, but they do monitor it closely.
All right, good.
Yeah, would you like to speak up?
I didn't mean
Please.
to speak on this subject, but
Sorry, just
Sorry.
so.
yes,
folks may-
so my name is Peter Alsop,
Thank you.
reside at 33 Gurney Street, kind of around the corner from this property. It has occurred to me that there is a potential trail system from Mace's that would be on the other side of Meadow Brook, which I believe this parcel, there's the house which is on the 17th Street side, but the property extends to the other side. And as long as you're discussing this, I just wanted to see if that's if the town would consider perhaps, if I could explore that with neighbors, for instance, to create a trail system that would connect with Mace's. Our property could be one of those. There's another neighbor as well that could potentially, find its way back to Old Rockland Street, and that community could take advantage of that space. This is something that's been in the back of my mind. I meant to discuss it with you, Orion, but since you guys are having this conversation, I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility. It would have a lot of value to the houses that are on Old Rockland Street to be able to have access to those woods and connect to Mace's. That parcel that you were speaking about, that 30-foot wide parcel, would be potentially a place of egress to gain access to it. But it would be dependent on the town considering maybe dividing that parcel so that there's a rear section which would be available for this.
So, was it, and I'll speak to the town side, we're
Yeah.
going to sell it, so
Straight.
if you and
Yeah.
your crew want
I
to
have
buy
no
it
interest in
and then
purchasing
parse it off,
a
and then,
salvageable house, but I was thinking of the land that's on the other side.
And so just
that's
looking
what
at
we're
some,
looking to do.
looking at some of the other trails in town, and even like McGuntacook Golf Course has some conservation easement land that's assigned there also. Typically, when that happens, there are land trusts, organizations that are good at managing those trail systems
Sure.
that would take over that piece of property. So again, our question is whether the town should dispose of it or keep it. And I don't know that the town would be best suited to maintain a trail system, but that's not to say that one of those land trusts couldn't acquire this property and do exactly what you're saying, which would be a fine idea.
Yeah, okay. Sounds like a conversation I should start with one of them.
Yeah, I think that's Coastal Mountains that
Sure.
has the one over by
The
Mace's
Mace's
there,
one,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that might be who you talk to.
Yep, okay. Thanks.
that works. I mean, that'd be cool.
Yeah. And so, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of discussion. It sounds like maybe folks have their mind made up here. I'm just going to throw out one other thing, and that is in light of the conversations that this board has been in over the last month or two. I don't know if we have the authority to do this, but in the event that we do make a recommendation for the town to dispose of the property, would it be reasonable for the town to look at maybe disposing of it at a nominal cost with restrictions on it that it be developed for affordable housing or multi-units? And so this is a piece of property now, you know, that would go. Just something to consider.
It's something to consider. And if sewer was there, I would say you'd have probably a stronger availability for a developer to do that. Because right now you're limited with the stream that's back there, the slope that's down to develop it into something. And I don't know if anybody could.
Would there be room for 4 units on that property, for example?
They'd have to do some soil
Soil
testing for the septic system, but if it's suitable, then it's possible.
So I just throw that idea out there. Maybe it's a way for the town to pay it forward, if it let that land go for a reasonable cost with the contingency that the developer, whoever purchased it, would develop it into affordable housing.
Yeah.
So we don't need to decide that here.
We
I think
would-
we would just make a recommendation, is all we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
The
recommendation to sell.
town would have to provide a sweetener for a developer.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's what I'm
That's a-
thinking, maybe to reduce cost potentially of the property.
Well, from what Orion was saying, this may go at an auction for a minimum bid of approximately $40,000, which is $10,000 an acre, which is reasonably cheap in this neighborhood. But I would think if we were serious about wanting to encourage affordable housing, that we provide some sort of guaranteed property rate issues or something. In other words, that the select board really needs to have, we on the select board need to have a longer discussion about how we encourage affordable housing.
Well, you're right, that's a bigger discussion.
Well, you're
I'm
much
just-
bigger
I'm just
discussion,
looking
right.
at this particular.
But I think you're right,
parcel.
but I think, I don't know that they want us to recommend anything, but I think that we should make that in the note.
You're right, we do not need to recommend anything.
Right.
And we have no authority to dictate anything, it would just be a recommendation, is
That's
all it
all,
would be,
yeah.
to consider it.
Right. I would be in favor.
Yes.
I would just be concerned, standing out by the property, there's very little frontage between the road and the easement for the DOT and the property. So that would suggest that this property has to move backwards if it was to be rebuilt. You also have Meadow Brook back there, which will require additional setbacks, plus fitting in a septic. I personally don't see that there's that much acreage between what the new setbacks would be from the road and the brook to create any sort of,
Side of the brook, I don't know, and I don't want to go through all the detailed calculations here, but that was just a thought. We could either recommend it or not. Okay, so first, let's just consider here whether the town should retain the property or not, and let's put that to a vote. I guess I'll word it in the affirmative of a sale, and I'll say, would anyone care to put forward a motion that the town move forward and sell the property located at map 007-137?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Jan, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Victoria. Okay, any further discussion on this?
I just wish the town could keep that little brook.
Yeah. Okay, hearing anything beyond that, I mean, you gonna, okay. Understand your motion tied to it. Okay, anything else down here? No? Okay, here, no further discussion. All in favor of the town selling the property? All right, and so we've got 7-0-0. Okay, now separately, whether or not we want to consider adding a recommendation to it. Again, that's not binding, we're not required to. Anybody have any feeling about that?
You want discussion now?
Yeah.
I think that we should recommend to the select board that consideration be made of dividing the property by the stream and offering the property at a reasonable price to the neighbors or to a conservation group for a trail system, and that the front of the property be sold off, or that the property be somehow finagled into usage for at least 4, if not more, affordable housing units. That those are things that that we would like them to look at before they simply put it out for auction.
Is that what you wanted to go? You want to enlarge it?
Okay.
How many acreages?
Anyone else?
I mean, I guess my concern would be if you divide it, preemptively divide it,
What is this telling
what
you?
happens if
How you
no
got
one's really interested? Then we have,
acreage?
then the town's just sitting on an island of land again.
Just trying to figure out how much was really.
Well, if it's given half the land away for $40,000, it's covered its costs. Somebody else can develop the trail system on it, and we're still stuck basically with half of the property that we had before, that we were stuck with, and you've put it up for sale.
Well, I guess, Orion, is there any, like, what's the administrative hassle that
Well,
presents possibly?
it's more of just cost, so it's an extra cost to split the lot and then get that registered. And then that goes on to the amount of money owed, so.
And so we
It's-
probably wouldn't do that unless we had a ballot offer.
Unless we had a valid offer, so, and I know some people are talking to, conservation commissions, not just, Peter Alsop, but other people. They're interested in doing kind of the similar thing, so there's a very real opportunity that a conservation commission comes in and buys it and demos the house themselves, so.
Can I ask, what's the recommendation of the Conservation Committee? Have they made one, or
Their
recommendation?
recommendation is to sell it, and that if there was any harmful items on the site for the town to remove them. So if there was any asbestos buried, then the town should take the ownership of removing that and cleaning it up to ensure that it's done correctly.
Okay.
And nothing was found to be harmful on the site.
Okay, so Jan, if I
Yes.
understood what you said, I think you had maybe a part A and a part B in there. I think you said, consider dividing it with part used for preserve hiking trails, the other part sold, or look at the possibility of using it for multi-unit affordable housing.
Yes.
Was that correct? Did I understand that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, you want to put that forward in terms of a motion? Just say that one more time.
Okay.
We'll put that to a
I
vote.
I move that the planning board recommend to the select board that while we agree with the idea of selling the property, we would like them to investigate 2 other possibilities that would involve, or another possibility that would involve dividing the property into a front half on Route 17 and a back half, or back 3/4, selling that property to, or donating it to a land trust for a trail system, or to have that property investigated for affordable housing, that it not simply be sold without any other thoughts, possibilities.
Okay,
Too complicated?
okay, that was a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion on that?
So what kind of investigation are you expecting the town will do? Because it's pretty subjective as to how they investigate that. I mean, it could be so much as
Well,
Orion discusses it
the
and says,
investigation would be,
Not feasible.
one, to contact Coastal Mountain Land Trust, make them aware of this idea and ask them for their opinion as to whether they think it would be viable for them or for somebody else. And then the other investigation would be to contact an area builder who has sufficient knowledge of that, or even somebody like Garsky and Dorsky, that can have sufficient knowledge about whether there is a tract of land that's available from Route 17 that could be made into 4, 5, 6 houses, something like that. And I wouldn't go any further than that. I don't think that the town should be spending much time or money on it, but I do think that it would be nice if they would spend a little bit of time looking into it.
You also got to keep in mind that the zone district is staying the same right now, so it's 908. So for multifamily, if that recommendation in June, if it passes, then 65,000 square feet per unit is for a multifamily. So that's gonna limit it to not a lot of units in and of itself, so then we
Well,
have to
then,
do
no,
zone
but,
change.
so then the investigation comes back impractical. Fine, I'm satisfied. I mean, if, I would like somebody to look at it and decide whether either of those options is practical.
I see what you're saying. Before selling it, see if it's practical.
Yes.
If we can achieve affordable housing on it.
Yeah, I look at it as there's a couple of good uses that it could be put to in the town, and we should at least look at those and see if they work.
Okay. Okay,
I agree with that.
I see it. I see what you're
We
saying.
could only make a suggestion to the select board, we can't give them an
Right.
order.
Right.
So,
It's not binding.
And it's in our scope to provide a recommendation along with this?
Well, I mean, your consultation, so yes. It hasn't, this is something that hasn't been utilized much, and there's not really any guiding
Right.
boundaries for it, so it's a case-by-case situation, and I don't know if we'll
Commission
have many of these,
recommended they clean it up.
yeah, you know.
they could always make,
Just common sense, Joe.
But I mean, technically, should we be doing this, or would it be the select board? That's,
I mean, this is the planning board, so land use related, so you'd make a recommendation for it. And it's town-owned land, so then the select board would have to enact that. So if the select board sells it, then they could put a condition on it for whatever reason and rationale, if they agree with you. But at any rate, the planning board recommends that it be sold.
For whatever it's worth, that lot that's across the street that has the cemetery in a corner of it, that's 20-plus acres, most of which, I'm just looking at it, looks like 18 of the 20 acres is not cleared whatsoever.
Yep.
So the town owns a much larger parcel directly across the street from this
oh, I
one.
didn't know that. Oh,
Is that wetlands?
It's
Yeah.
partially wetland,
Yeah.
only near the road.
Right.
Okay.
Well, but our
town owns
recommend
that
doesn't have
parcel
anything to do
across
with
the
that.
street?
Okay, so we still have
That's
Jan's
right.
motion on the table. Any further discussion on that motion?
Motion
Okay.
and seconded.
That's right.
Okay, motion was seconded by Tom. So hearing no further discussion, let's put it to a vote. All in favor of Jan's suggestion on the letter of recommendation? All right, and we've got 7-0-0. Okay. Thank you.
That would be Jan with an N.
Okay, other business, move on to two things here that I've got notes on. One is planning board training. I think at least two people here, myself and Victoria, went to the, you went, didn't you? That train. Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was nothing, in my mind, that was, gave you all of the answers. Kind of like when you go to school, you don't learn everything you need for your first job in school. You learn those things when you actually get out and start practicing it. But there were some good things I think I picked up out of that training, well grounding. So that's available. Is it available both remotely via Zoom and live, or just live?
It looks like it's just
That's
live.
live. That's hard to believe these days, but.
Yeah.
Lunch provided?
No, dinner is.
Dinner.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
well,
actually, when I went, it was at night.
This is a
It's
selling
like
point.
3 hours. So they're offering it in different places. I think the next one's in Lewiston. I took it in Augusta. It's probably offered in different places. There's 4 of them. So if anyone has any interest in attending those, please contact Orion.
I do. Yeah.
Yep.
Who conducts it?
Maine Municipal Association.
Yeah.
Good.
I actually had the privilege when I took it, and I think Victoria too, of having the, one of the instructors was, I can't even remember, Kristen.
Collins.
Yeah. Gave the legal perspective on that. Okay, next item is looking at land use ordinance residential housing. We went through a quite rushed and hurried look at LD 2003. I've had several conversations with Vicky Dudera about this, and my concern about the fact, as a resident of Rockport, not as a planning board member, but as a resident of Rockport, the fact that it appeared that this was being rushed through. And there is going to be, I guess, a committee hearing on Friday about delays, and there have been a couple of amendments to this that have already been proposed. There were some public hearings back in the beginning of April about delaying it by 2 years. Others proposed it be reduced to 1 year. And then there was also an amendment that was proposed about only applying LD 2003 to municipalities that are over 10,000. And so those two things were on the table. So this Friday, though, they are going to be considering a delay and putting through a delay on LD 2003 implementation date that would push it back from July of this year by maybe a year, maybe 2 years.
By Friday, you mean tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. So anyway, given that, whether it's delayed or not, I still feel like we've got some work to do with respect to updating some of the aspects of residential housing in our land use ordinance. And so what I'd like to propose is that the planning board have some workshops here over the next several months to talk about, look at these sections of residential housing and see if there are some things that need to be changed, updated in our ordinance. So unless anybody thinks that's a bad idea, I did talk a little bit with Ryan about it to lead us through those workshops, maybe bring in some speakers from outside the planning board and the town to help us understand what maybe some things are that are constraining development in some areas and go from there.
I think it's a good idea.
Great.
So let's just talk a little bit about scheduling of that. We're getting into summer months now. If we did a meeting, and this would be in addition to our regular planning board business and monthly meetings, let's say that we spend 2 hours on a workshop, would anyone be adverse to doing these over the next several months for 1 day, 2 hours, 1 day, once a month? That work with people's schedule?
That would be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so there we go. We got an outline for a schedule.
Yeah.
Good. We'll get some dates.
Yes, we'll get some dates, put them out there, and we'll talk more about outlines. What we're gonna do.
Great.
All right? Okay, any other business?
I have a question.
Yes.
When I was going through the package, I saw that Peter had put in a handicap parking spot. And I thought, I wonder if we addressed that anywhere in the land use ordinance, and I can't find anything. So the next thought was, are we automatically, all of our ordinances automatically subjected to state and federal laws so that we don't have to do things in our ordinances that are covered by federal laws?
That would have to do with building code,
That's Americans with Disabilities Act.
yeah, and that,
Yeah.
but
So I know that that's federal. So we don't have to say that residents have to have, or that the building parking lots have to have X number of,
correct.
that's already done.
So are you asking
Done for us.
if there's things that are outside of our ordinance that we have to adhere to?
Yes, of course.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
okay, good, okay.
Yeah.
Just, that's what I figured.
Okay. One of the things that troubles me about something like that, though, is that when you read any kind of regulation, and it says, it's like looking at a internet site where have all these links, so you never know, when you go to the main revised statutes, reading that is like terrible. And same thing with the IRS. You know, you go there and it says, well, subject to this. Well, what the heck is this?
Right.
So then you have to go, it's like going down,
Rabbit hole.
yeah, it's like going down what kind of
A
hole?
rabbit hole.
Yeah, rabbit hole.
So in
it
those.
would be good if, even though we refer to the relevant federal guideline or federal regulation, it would be good to include a synopsis of that or the pertinent part of it. Can you do that in our?
That would get really complicated.
Yes.
Would it?
Yeah, I would rather advise, like, if there's something in an application that it's like not in our ordinance, but like it's some federal thing and y'all don't understand it, then we'd bring in our attorney to
Yeah.
clear those up.
That's their job.
Yeah.
Because
My
we don't-
concern always
because
is,
we won't find, the seven of us, we're not gonna find everything that needs to be wormholed out, so.
no, and my concern is when you state things in two places,
Right.
That's,
it's,
yeah, that's
it's gonna
a
get
problem,
confusing,
too.
it's gonna contradict,
I-
it's
I
gonna be
agree
hard to
with
keep up to date.
Yep.
So,
Well,
yeah.
there's something to that, which is that the code enforcement officer is responsible for reviewing anything that's code-related, and we don't.
Okay,
And anything that's access-oriented is part of the Americans with Disabilities Act, access guidelines, and that's not enforced by the code enforcement officer or us. It's a civil rights issue. So
okay.
Will is going to put the correct number of accessible parking spaces on Peter's plan because he knows what
Because
those
that's his job,
regulations
yeah,
are.
okay.
And he knows it to protect Peter's interests.
So what, for my information, what is the path? Somebody wants to do something in this town. Peter wants to convert a building. What is the path through which that process must go? I mean, at what point do we see it? At what point does the code official see it to make sure that what he's doing is up to code and so forth? What is the path?
Well, so in terms of like, once it's built and
No,
done?
no. He wants to convert a building.
Yeah,
Another guy wants to build a shed on Route 1. I know that they come to us, but I don't know who else they have to go through
Okay,
to
okay,
do.
okay. So depending on the level, like there's those thresholds in
Understood.
1300. So if it comes to you, y'all approve it. And then it goes to the code officer to get the permits to build it. And then the code officer has to do his inspections and then his certificate of occupancy.
Okay,
And then if there's any violations, he gets called out to take a look at it.
okay,
Yeah, there's much more detail the code enforcement officer gets into than we do.
Okay.
And the structure itself.
Yeah.
and he or she sees everything.
Yes.
Any building that goes on has to go
Yes.
through that. Okay, okay. So we are then like the first step?
At particular thresholds, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Just scheduling in June. That fourth Thursday, I'm not here. I'll be in Spain, so I'll be here for the next Thursday. So can we bump that meeting back a week?
Join with Zoom?
No,
Is
I
this your
cannot.
honeymoon or what?
Yes,
Where are you going?
Ah,
Yay.
Spain. Going to Majorca.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I'm going to Barcelona, but not till September.
Oh man, well,
Okay, and I won't be.
you
at the
definitely have to
meeting either.
zoom in
Fred
though.
season,
We
right?
got-
I
we
know.
gotta see
Oh, God, I hope not.
So you're saying to move it to the 29th?
yes,
So you want to move it to the third Thursday in June?
fourth,
fifth.
the fifth Thursday.
I thought we were always on the fourth
On the
Thursday.
20
No, you are always on
No,
fourth
it's
Thursday.
22nd,
June.
yeah.
Right.
June.
So
June.
June 29th.
Okay, and May stays as it is, right?
May stays as it is.
Okay.
Will be 6/29, my brother's birthday, okay. Okay, have a good time.
Now I will.
Does your wife know about this?
Yeah, she knows about it.
Just don't
I
want to say
I
anything.
guess he didn't hear
Just
that
don't
when
want
I
to say
come.
anything.
That's,
you know?
this is my honeymoon,
Oh,
so
nice.
she definitely knows about it.
Good then.
All right, anything else, Ryan?
No.
Okay.
So I actually just, while we're chit-chatting a little bit, Orion, the question came up because we had an application come through, get approved, and then it sort of felt very odd because what it was approved for was one thing, and then not, I don't know, 6 months later, it's in front of the select board, you know, applying for something that's, to me, would be a very different use.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, okay.
I've wondered about that stuff
No.
too.
So, I don't know
So,
how to, I'm
what's
gonna
the-
try to answer this one. So, for example, a business comes up. Let's just say, actually, let's do a no. Man, what's an example that I can give here without specifically calling that one out?
Deli.
A deli. Yeah, I mean, a deli. And a deli wants to expand because
They're
there's,
making sandwiches and now they're gonna make pizza.
yeah, well, I mean, that's still food.
I have
Another
another one. We have an
boutique.
we have an
Well-
ice cream stand that all of a sudden asks
I mean,
for
if-
a
if-
liquor
I-
license.
They're gonna serve beer in the deli.
They
Yeah.
can serve beer in the deli, so, I mean, you get your liquor license for that. You have to go through your appropriate channels, but, depending on the code officer and their permitting of it, if that is within that realm of what was approved and in that realm of usage, then it's fine. But if the code officer says no, you gotta go to planning board to get approval for that change of use.
So really, it's up to the code officer
It's really up to the code
make the
officer.
determination whether it comes back before the planning board.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, because in that case, you know, that's in an area of the town, we just use that as an example. It's an area of the town where there's always a concentration of a certain number of other establishments that are already serving liquor. And there's already a problem with parking in that neck of the woods. And so I just felt like, you know, that's a situation, for instance, that it should have been discussed a little more, instead of just immediately saying, oh,
So,
let's
I mean-
treat it like any other liquor
And
license.
I don't know if they've gotten the liquor license approved from the select board standpoint, like, so you get your liquor license approved from a select board, and then you go through your appropriate permitting aspect of it, so I don't know if, it depends on when things happen, so there could be in the future, said example coming before you, but I don't know where that permit process is.
I had a sense that there was a little bit of confusion about the process.
There's,
About whether things that, whether liquor licenses go before the code enforcement officer. And I didn't understand from that meeting that they did before that.
I mean,
I
there's
think
like
they do
some.
now, don't they?
Yeah, there's some initial review, and it's confusing altogether, and mainly because we've got a lot of change, because the clerk's involved on the liquor licensing,
Right.
and then they get all the paperwork together, and then that goes to the select board. Code officer generally sees it sometimes beforehand, most of the time he does, but it doesn't, there's not like a recommendation that goes along with it that everything's
Right.
okay. But, you know, you get your liquor license, and then you want to do your business, you got to get your permit to do your business. So then it gets reviewed again, is there enough of the use allowed? So, I mean, a lot of people, when they're gonna apply for the liquor license, they're not gonna develop first and then get liquor license, because what if you don't get your liquor license approved? So you get your liquor license and then you go through the development process.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think a liquor license is so essential that you do that first.
I mean, it is.
Let
If
me
you
ask you a
get your
question.
denial, then you don't wanna spend any money
Are
on it.
we prepared for recreational marijuana facilities in?
We've got an ordinance about that.
We do.
We do.
Where is it?
It is not in the land use ordinance for whatever reason.
Oh. Where do I find the rest of these ordinances?
I'll send you, it's actually on our website.
Okay,
If you go to our ordinance page on our website,
right.
you will find all ordinances there. I
Yeah, but
spent a long time.
they're not, it's not clear what's what.
No,
Before we get off track too far, do we close out your concern?
Well, no, I feel like it's still pretty mushy. And to me, it's not the first time we've had an application where we've approved it and then we watch a year, maybe 2 years down the road and it, you know, the conditions of approval may not be getting enforced or they've changed their direction completely and they say, oh, that
Okay.
didn't work out, so now we want to be this kind of a
Yeah.
business.
I'll say right now, like, we've got one code enforcement officer who full-time is just churning out permits and doing inspections, and then unless a complaint comes in, I mean, it's kind of hard to go for that. Now, I'm in the office, I'm trying to get an alternate code officer, but, you know, I think maybe year 3 under John, I might get one, but he had his set of problems that had to get taken care of first year, second year's got another set of problems, third year might be the year. We'll see, but
Well, I
in,
guess-
in any rate, right now, unless a complaint comes in, we're gonna have a hard time enforcing anything.
Well, I guess what I would like to see is just maybe an understanding that when a new application is approved, and if it's, something's gonna move around on that application, like in the first year or two, that sort of raises a red flag that says, take a closer look at this with the select board. And instead of what I observed in that particular instance, that was a different example from what I was talking about, but I'll talk about that one. The select board seemed to just be, let's just go ahead and say yes.
mean,
And
that
there was
for-
no questions really being asked. It was like, oh, this is
For a
great.
liquor license, they're not gonna ask those kinds of questions. It's mainly, I forget what they're looking at. I don't know if it's like a quantity-based thing or what, but that's all they're really gonna concern themselves with. And then on our end is where we apply that to the ordinance. Okay, you got your liquor license, and okay, now let's look at your uses, and do you have the ability to make that operate here? And then if that's outside of the code officer's ability to permit, then it goes for the board here to review.
Right. Yeah, my initial concern about what you're discussing, John, was the process. I just wasn't sure that the code enforcement officer had an opportunity to look at that one. And from the feedback I got at that meeting, I don't think he did. Because I think John was a little bit stumped by that also. Nobody said that Scott had ever looked at it. And so, on one hand, we don't want to get into approving menu items, but then there are more substantial changes. I don't know how you define those. But I think if the process works and the code enforcement officer is making that judgment, I think that's a good step.
So there's an interesting, goes back to the code versus the zoning, where the change of a business that's doing food service and a business that's doing food service with alcohol is not really a distinction in our zoning ordinance. It is a distinction in the code, though.
That's
So
not
the
mine.
code would,
That's not mine.
for the sake of,
Okay.
oh, that's him. For the sake of like, if it serves alcohol, then it's going to be in a different occupancy level under the plumbing code than if it didn't. So that's where the code enforcement officer's review of this is important, because it changes the requirements. It requires more toilet facilities if you're serving alcohol. Like, it just changes things. And I know this from personal experience, that it's not simply a rubber stamp to say, yeah, you can have a liquor license. So I'm hoping that the select board isn't treating it that way, or the town isn't treating it that way, as just a simple pass if not everything is in order. Like, there are actual code implications.
So yes, the code officer has to review, I mean, you get your liquor license, you can't just go out and sell alcohol at that point. I mean, you have the license to sell it, but
Right.
then you're gonna have the enforcement of the code, or the code to contend with. Yes, to your point, yes.
Yeah. You still have to have a space that complies with it. So if
Correct.
we approve something that complies with a certain use, and it's fine with the code enforcement officer with that use, you can't just add a liquor license to it, and it necessarily is still in compliance.
Yeah, I'll just add that what I observed in the meeting was that the select board was suddenly like having the exact same conversations that we have as a planning board. And I'm thinking, well, if the select board is reviewing this as though they are a planning board, what is the select,
Yeah.
who's
I mean, we're-
doing what?
we're- Yeah, I mean, that,
It wasn't a small conversation. I mean,
no, it wasn't a small conversation, but
You know,
that's not-
anyway, I'll drop it, but I just think it would be better to have a little bit of clarity up front. And like I say, I just feel like a lot of times we're hearing one thing and then people are walking out of here thinking they can just pretty much do whatever they want. And that didn't feel very
Sure.
good, because it's, what are we here as a planning board for if that's gonna happen? So,
Sure.
That's all.
I mean, so to the point, I mean, I need more personnel, fortunately,
Yeah.
to enforce it. There's, I mean,
But we did
there's
just
more
make
going on here
Scott
than people.
full-time, and he had been
And he's still
part-time.
He's
so,
still day in, day out, still clocking some overtime too.
yeah. No, I'm not, by the way, I'm not questioning
Oh,
Scott
I know,
or
I
anything
know,
like
I know,
that.
I
It just-
understand that.
That one just felt, it left a bad taste in my mouth. you
Sure.
know, so.
Okay, any other items?
Nope.
No. All right, anybody?
Move to adjourn?
Yes. Second?
Okay.
Second?
Sure,
Jan, second? All in favor? 700.
okay.
So the meeting is adjourned at 6:38 PM. Thank you.